Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of The Great Ruler Season 2 Part 5 based on novel. So let's start. As the brilliant downpour fell, a majority of the rain was absorbed as it whistled towards Mu Chen's direction. The remaining raindrops fell onto the ground. On the surrounding bald mountains, some of them would occasionally be hit by the stormy raindrops and would instantly crumble. Thereafter, they would be reduced to ashes and leave dents and deep holes on the mountains. No wonder there wasn't any life force around here. Facing this kind of harsh environment, there wasn't any powerful plants that could survive here. Mu Chen wasn't distracted by the scene that was around him. His eyes were fixed on the light screen that was above him. At the heart of the light screen was the white dragon spiritual pearl that had not moved a single jolt. It was constantly emitting a white light as it obstructed the storming lightning rain. Under the wash of the lightning rain, the white screen was also rippling with fluctuations. More and more lightning rain whistled down. Just from the looks of it, it was extremely shocking. However, the white dragon spiritual pearl wasn't an ordinary object. Even with the rain wreaking havoc, it still stood towering and did not move. Looking at it, Mu Chen was shocked and overjoyed. He was shocked at the power of the white dragon spiritual pearl that could even withstand such lightning rain falling on it. He was overjoyed as the more powerful the white dragon spiritual pearl was, there would be more benefits that he would gain when the seal broke. Rumble. Up on the horizon, the ink-like lightning clouds violently wiggled about, as though they sensed how powerful the white dragon spiritual pearl was. As they wiggled, the stormy rain became even more violent. That scene caused Mu Chen to be alarmed. Under this storm, even a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert would be heavily wounded by it. Roar! The white dragon spiritual pearl was heavily clashing against the falling lightning rain. A deep dragon roar burst forth as the white light rippled, as though it was enraged by the rain. The white light engulfed Mu Chen and the lightning rain that was falling on it was dispersed. Rumble! Towards the provoking roar, the lightning clouds at the horizon also gave their reply. As lightning clouds wiggled about, the rain actually started to merge. Fine lightning rain merged together and formed into silver lightning that was as thick as a person's arm. They pierced through the heavens and heavily clashed against the white dragon spiritual pearl, along with an irresistible violent energy. As the two astonishing powers clashed, ripples fluctuated out that caused even the space to twist. The white dragon spiritual pearl was fiercely clashing against the layers of clouds. Mu Chen sat on the silver lightning platform as he raised his head, witnessing the fight between the two forces. He constantly controlled the lightning platform, continuously increasing its power. He wasn't worried that the white dragon spiritual pearl couldn't take it, he was just worried that the lightning energy wasn't powerful enough and would be unable to break the seal on the white dragon spiritual pearl. Otherwise, all of his effort would go to waste. However, he still belittled the white dragon spiritual pearl. As an item of a sovereign, it had gone through years of time and yet it was still so powerful. The lightning clouds that filled the whole sky continued for a full 3 days and 3 nights. However, the light emitting from the white dragon spiritual pearl was still so dazzling. Frightening spiritual energy ripples fluctuated as they dispersed the liquid lightning. Because Mu Chen was constantly activating the effects of the lightning platform, there would be thunderclouds constantly being attracted towards this region and they would merge together. During these 3 days and 3 nights' time, the violent lightning rain had not stopped for a moment. The white dragon spiritual pearl is way too powerful. Mu Chen couldn't help smacking his lips. Under the impact, even a heavenly transformation stage middle phase expert would not dare to endure for so long. However, seeing the white dragon spiritual pearl, it was still so lively and there weren't any signs of the seal being broken. I refuse to believe that you can keep going on. Mu Chen grounded his teeth and poured his spiritual energy into the lightning platform again. The current lightning platform burst forth with great light. This continued for a full 10 days. In these 10 days, the lightning rain never stopped. Although the violent rain caused the white dragon spiritual pearl to dim a little, the seal still stood strong. This made Mu Chen a little speechless. No wonder even the 9 Netherbird said that it didn't have any confidence in breaking the seal on the White Dragon spiritual pearl. It was actually this powerful. Mu Chen raised his head and gravely looked up at the sky. Because he continuously used the lightning platform, the entire region was basically filled with thunderclouds. The scene was so dark that even the space was about to be suppressed. The thunderclouds in this area were already extremely frightening to the point that even Mu Chen was a little panic-stricken as he understood that if it was him, there was no way he could fully escape from this situation. There weren't that many people that dared to attract thunderclouds in such a fierce manner in the 7th level of the lightning territory. Although the lightning energy in the lightning territory could refine spiritual energy, if one were to over-refine their spiritual energy, they would explode it into dust. Mu Chen exhaled a mouthful of air as he looked at the ink-like thunderclouds. Because of the lightning energy being way too violent, Mu Chen could see lightning flickers within the thunderclouds, as if they had formed into a lightning river. That river was slowly flowing within the thunderclouds, emitting ripples that would make anyone's scalp tingle. "I can't carry on," Mu Chen muttered. From the current situation, if he were to carry on, who knows how long it would take him, and the hunting war was less than a month away. Clearly, he couldn't spend too much time on breaking the seal. "Seems like I have to get even fiercer." Mu Chen slightly hesitated. Shortly after, he clenched his teeth and flicked his fingers. The White Dragon spiritual pearl brought along a torrential white light. It was like a light beam as it soared up into the lightning river that was flowing within the thunderclouds. The lightning river was formed from the violent lightning energy that accumulated after more than 10 days. Within it, the lightning energy was way too violent that even Mu Chen felt a little palpitation. However, this was the only way for him right now. The white light soared up and was especially eye-catching in this dark horizon. At the end of the horizon, who knows how many people have gathered here? They were all the people that were training in the 7th level of the lightning territory. They'd noticed the commotion at Mu Chen's side and, henceforth, they came to investigate. They were exceptionally astonished that there would be someone that dared to lure such threatening thunderclouds. Even they didn't dare to casually step foot into that region. This made them a little curious. They did not know which fellow had concealed himself for so long and then suddenly burst out by actually causing such a huge scene. Something flew up into the thunderclouds. Under the darkened horizon, someone spoke. They saw something soaring up to the darkened sky and into the white light in the thunderclouds. There was already a lightning river formed in the thunderclouds. What is that guy thinking? Doesn't he know how fearsome the violent lightning river is? When those that could be considered to be outstanding in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy saw this scene, their faces changed. Shortly after, all of them moved back simultaneously with shock filling their eyes. Mu Chen, naturally, didn't know the attention that he had attracted from his actions. His eyes were fixed on the White Dragon spiritual pearl. The latter had already turned into a white light piercing through the thunderclouds and into the lightning river. Rumble. The instant they clashed, there was a thunderous roar in the horizon. It violently resounded throughout the sky, and under the noise, even the horizon started to tremble. Boom! The omnipresent lightning light burst out from the thunderclouds, and, under that lightning, the ink-black thundercloud started to rapidly dissipate. In the range of 200 li, the black thunderclouds rapidly disappeared. The lightning was all attracted by the liquid body of lightning, possessing terrifying power. Mu Chen watched as a mountain peak was reduced to dust by the liquid formed from the lightning. Mu Chen felt his scalp tingling as he immediately turned off the lightning luring platform. However, he was on a mountain peak as well, and there were liquid forms of the lightning flashing down. Mu Chen's face drastically changed. The lightning speed was too fast that he could not evade in time. Boom! When the liquid-formed lightning was about to hit Mu Chen, torrential black flames swept out of his body and formed into a pair of huge wings that were engulfed in black flames, protecting him. Bang! Bang! The liquid-form lightning landed on the flaming black wings and burst forth with violent ripples. Thereafter, they gradually dissipated. Thanks. Mu Chen was relieved as he spoke in his heart. He knew that it was the 9 Netherbird that helped him. Otherwise, he would be in a terrible state from the liquid form lightning. The The seal on the White Dragon spiritual pearl should be breaking soon, the Nine Netherbirds' voice sounded in Mu Chen's heart. When Mu Chen heard what it said, he immediately raised his head and saw the White Dragon spiritual pearl bathed in the lightning river. Under the corrosion of the violent energy, the light on the White Dragon spiritual pearl dimmed down. As the White Dragon spiritual pearl dimmed down, the dragon pattern that was engraved on the surface of the White Dragon spiritual pearl also started to disappear, bit by bit. The speed of the dragon pattern disappearing was extremely fast. In a few dozen breaths' time, it thoroughly dissipated. In that instant, when the dragon pattern disappeared, Mu Chen could clearly sense pure spiritual energy ripples exploding from within. If the spiritual energy of the White Dragon spiritual pearl was previously restricted, then, right now, it had been truly unleashed. The seal is gone. Joy filled Mu Chen's eyes. After all his efforts, he had finally broke the seal on the White Dragon spiritual pearl. Shoo-hoo! The flaming black wings that were protecting Mu Chen shot into the lightning river and grabbed onto the White Dragon spiritual pearl. Thereafter, they quickly returned. However, in just a few short breaths, the black flames on the wings dissipated a little. Mu Chen extended his hand out and grabbed onto the cool White Dragon spiritual pearl. He could sense that, right now, he had truly obtained the White Dragon spiritual pearl. On the lightning-luring platform, Mu Chen looked at the warm White Dragon spiritual pearl in his hand with unconcealable joy in his eyes. But fortunately, he rapidly restored his clarity and did not investigate the White Dragon spiritual pearl. With a flip of his hand, he stored the White Dragon spiritual pearl. Up in the sky, the lightning river was still wreaking havoc on this land. When Mu Chen saw it, he leaped down the mountain peak as he ran, sticking close to the ground. The commotion that he caused in this area was too huge. Previously, he had already sensed some gazes staring at his direction. Therefore, he clearly could not continue to remain here any longer and had to find a new place to cultivate. Mu Chen flew close to the ground, avoiding the pouring torrents. After a few minutes, he managed to leave the region where the thunderclouds were wreaking havoc. After he left, the frightening lightning ripples had also weakened, little by little. The surrounding pressure that was slightly dissipating made Mu Chen feel relieved. Shortly after, he pushed his speed to the limits and rapidly left this region, searching for a new remote area, before he slowed himself down. There was a short hill that wasn't that eye-catching in this mountain range. Furthermore, by borrowing the surrounding mountains, he could avoid anyone noticing this area. Mu Chen's figure landed on top of the hill. He looked around before calming himself down. With a grasp of his hand, the White Dragon spiritual pearl had, once again, appeared in his hand. Only now did he have time to take a good look at the White Dragon spiritual pearl, whose seal had been broken. There wasn't that many changes on the exterior, except that the White Dragon patterns on it had disappeared. Within the pearl, a white mist looked as though it had penetrated the White Dragon spiritual pearl as it curled around the surface of the pearl. It appeared extremely magical. Mu Chen grabbed onto the White Dragon spiritual pearl as he sensed the boundless energy within it. His expression also couldn't help turning grave. Thereafter, he deeply inhaled a mouthful of air and his hands came together with the White Dragon spiritual pearl floating on top of both of his palms. A pitch-black spiritual energy poured out of Mu Chen's palms and shrouded the White Dragon spiritual pearl. Just when Mu Chen's spiritual energy was about to come in contact with the White Dragon spiritual pearl, the pearl immediately burst forth with dazzling light and shrouded his figure. When the white light shrouded him, Mu Chen's eyes blurred and soon after, he realized that the scenery before him had changed. That's... Mu Chen looked at the white world as he was engrossed in his own thoughts. This should be the world within the White Dragon spiritual pearl. Back then, when it was being sealed, he did attempt to try it, but had been directly rejected by the pearl. Now that the seal was broken, he could finally enter it. He looked around and slightly hesitated. Thereafter, he flew towards the boundless white world. As he marched forth, the white mist started to dissipate. When Mu Chen moved, the surrounding scenery changed again. The white mist rapidly disappeared and a landscape appeared. It was a vast world. Mu Chen stood on the horizon as he looked down on the world. When he was slightly at a loss, a scarlet blood color appeared on the far horizon. Thereafter, the scarlet blood color surged over along with an endless chill. On the spot that the scarlet blood-colored tidal wave passed, endless life forms were being devoured. Even the various energies between the heavens and earth were extinguished by the torrential scarlet-red color. At the front of the scarlet blood-color tidal wave, there seemed to be countless figures soaring up into the sky as they tried their best to obstruct it. However, their powers were tiny before the scarlet blood-colored tidal wave. Countless hopeless screams resounded within the entire world as they fell into the terrifying Judgment Day. This was a devastating disaster. The scarlet blood color slowly spread to the unfamiliar world as the life forms were being devoured. The energies between the heavens and earth weren't an exception either, as they became polluted. A world filled with life forms were all entirely annihilated at this moment. Mu Chen was drenched in a cold sweat as he watched the scene before him. His heart was filled with fear. What was that scarlet blood-colored tidal wave doing in this world? It's actually so terrifying. Mu Chen watched the scene as a bloodlight gathered. There was an illusory figure filled with scarlet scales that walked out. It was like a demonic god that looked as though it was the most sinister thing in this world had directed its pupils towards Mu Chen's direction. As the gaze was directed at his direction, Mu Chen's heart jolted. The scenery before him changed. It was like a world that was about to be destroyed. There were countless figures within the towering mountain tearing space cracks and left, fleeing for their lives. Mu Chen looked at those figures and, among them, there was a white-haired figure that he had seen before. That's the White Dragon Sovereign. Mu Chen's heart violently jolted as he muttered out. The scene before him watered down as though countless months and years had shuttled past. When Mu Chen recovered, the scenery before him had restored back to the white misty world. Mu Chen's forehead was filled with sweat as his heart was still shocked. The scene from before gave him a huge shock. Just what were those scarlet blood-colored life forms? Could it be that among all those who escaped, the White Dragon Sovereign was among them? Correct, I had escaped from there. Suddenly, a faint voice resounded out. Mu Chen was startled as he immediately raised his head. In the white misty world, the white mist started to gather as a deep dragon roar resounded out. As the white mist gathered, it turned into a huge white dragon that soared towards the horizons. The white dragon spiraled and Mu Chen sat down before it. At the head of the white dragon, a light flickered and a figure had appeared. That figure had snow-white hair, but his skin was youthful. His pair of white pupils were exceptionally bizarre. He sat on the white dragon and his pupils stared at Mu Chen. Ha ha, it seems that you've broken the seal within the white dragon spiritual pearl. That white-pupiled figure then faintly smiled. His gentle voice resounded in this white misty world. White Dragon Sovereign. When Mu Chen saw that figure, his heart jolted. In the space of the spirit treasury, he had seen this figure before. However, the figure that he saw was extremely blurry, and right now, the latter was extremely clear. Precisely because of the clarity, Mu Chen could vaguely sense the terrifying sovereign's pressure. Even if the latter had fallen, his sovereign pressure still existed. Mu Chen pays respect to Elder. I was lucky to obtain the White Dragon Spiritual Pearl. It was rude and impetuous of me to break the seal. I seek your forgiveness for the alarm. Mu Chen cupped his hands as he said cautiously. Although the White Dragon Sovereign had fallen, an existence of his level could cause huge danger to him with the slightest method they had left behind. Therefore, it was better for him to be more humble. The White Dragon Sovereign's pupils stared at Mu Chen and, shortly after, he laughed as he waved his hand. It was your fate to obtain this White Dragon Spiritual Pearl that I had left behind. Mu Chen nodded and hesitated a while, before couldn't help asking, what was it that I saw earlier? The scene that he saw earlier, a world with billions of life forms being annihilated, was way too frightening. Just scenes that I've experienced, the White Dragon Sovereign faintly smiled and continued, the Great Thousand World was boundless and was the location where countless lower planes intercepted. It was extremely savage and cruel, it wasn't something that you can understand. Mu Chen was speechless. Although he had not experienced the frightening situation before, he could sense how horrifying it was. What was that thing within the blood-colored tidal wave? Mu Chen asked. That life form made him feel fear. That was one of the foreign fiends. We call it as the Fiend Blood Tribe. What you've just seen was a world that they had destroyed, and it was my hometown. Ha ha, I was someone who had escaped from the lower planes. The White Dragon Sovereign smiled, however, his smile was numbing and mournful. What are the foreign fiends? Mu Chen muttered. The White Dragon Sovereign slightly lowered his head. I don't have much understanding towards them. They are born in the Great Thousand World and are towards the inner sides. If without any mishap, perhaps you won't come to know about these things in your entire life. But for the lower planes, they are extremely terrifying. Once they find a lower plane and corrode it, the outcome is the annihilation of all life forms, just as what you've seen earlier on. Although it sounded unreal to you, have you heard of this existence called the Martial Ancestor before? The White Dragon Sovereign looked at Mu Chen. The Martial Ancestor, Ling Dong? Mu Chen was startled. The White Dragon Sovereign nodded. The Martial Ancestor was also from the lower planes. Furthermore, his lower planes had once suffered the attacks of the fiends. But the Martial Ancestor was, after all, much stronger than you and I. Not only did he expel the fiends, he also managed to behead a branch of the Fiend Tribe's emperor. Although it was just a branch, the power that they possessed was something that the lower planes could not withstand. To be able to achieve that as someone from the lower planes, the Martial Ancestor was, indeed, worthy of others' admiration. He was much stronger than us. Mu Chen was stunned. Compared to the lower planes, the Great Thousand World had more advantages. The level of experts here was far more powerful than those of the lower planes. For this Martial Ancestor to make achievements up to this step with the resources of the lower planes, he was indeed not simple. No wonder he could establish such a powerful existence like the martial realm in the Great Thousand World. Ha ha, I've not spoke for a long time, and I have, indeed, spoke too much in such a short while. The White Dragon Sovereign smiled as he gradually recovered. He was, after all, a remnant of intent right now. At the spot, he waved his hand as he looked at Mu Chen. It was fate that we met. Since you're able to obtain this White Dragon Spiritual Pearl and also breaking the seal, then let me lend you a helping hand. As he finished speaking, his sleeves waved and an endless amount of white mist surged over. The white mist contained pure and boundless spiritual energy. The White Dragon Sovereign smiled as he pointed towards the air. Torrential waves surged in this world with the wind and clouds rolled, and boundless pure spiritual energy was pouring towards Mu Chen in tidal waves. It'd be up to your ability on how much remnant energy you can absorb that was left by me. A majestic spiritual energy suddenly surged out of the White Dragon Spiritual Pearl as the endless spiritual energy poured into Mu Chen's body. Under the overflowing sensation, Mu Chen felt a swelling sensation. The spiritual energy within the White Dragon Spiritual Pearl was way too much for him. I can't absorb all of it. Mu Chen's heart flashed with that thought as he immediately flew out, landing onto a lightning-luring platform that was closest to him and rapidly activated the platform. Thereafter, thunder clouds started to gather on the horizon. However, compared to his previous encounter, it was much more gentle. But, of course, this comparison was only to his previous encounter. The lightning energy in the 7th level was extremely robust. Even a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert would find it hard to bear. If it wasn't for Mu Chen having some means up his sleeve, it was basically impossible for him to enter into this level. Pitch-black thunder clouds gathered above Mu Chen as lightning rain fell, hitting Mu Chen and causing red marks to appear on his body. At the same time, the lightning energy also flowed into the pores all over his body as they endlessly poured onto his body. When the lightning energy poured onto Mu Chen's body, it instantly caused a conflict with the boundless energy from the White Dragon Spiritual Pearl. As the two forces clashed, they reacted with a shocking response. The lightning energy in the lightning territory possessed an effect of refining spiritual energy. Henceforth, when it clashed with the vast spiritual energy from the White Dragon Spiritual Pearl, the spiritual energy started to slowly shrink. As the spiritual energy shrank, the color turned increasingly deep and refined. With the refining aid from the lightning energy, Mu Chen slowly exhaled a mouthful of air. Shortly after, he circulated the Great Pagoda art to refine the spiritual energy and constantly absorbed them. Lastly, they poured into his aura sea, and were absorbed by the small spirit that was seated within. This speed of cultivation was way faster compared to his ordinary speed. However, that wasn't the crucial point. The crucial point was that the spiritual energy from the white dragon spiritual pearl was extremely pure without any consciousness. Henceforth, it did not resist Mu Chen's refinement, which caused this method of cultivation to be smooth. In his aura sea, the small spirit rippled with light around him as it devoured the spiritual energy that was endlessly pouring into his aura sea. As he devoured it, he started to slowly grow, and the spiritual energy ripples that were emitted from him also grew stronger. The light that was emitting from the white dragon spiritual pearl also grew stronger. Thereafter, it shrouded Mu Chen's body into it. The black thunderclouds that were above Mu Chen have been constantly moving around as mild lightning rain fell. All that lightning energy was being endlessly poured onto Mu Chen's body to refine the spiritual energy from the white dragon spiritual pearl. Mu Chen tightly closed his eyes. His expression was focused as he kept circulating the great pagoda art to refine it. Thereafter, he did not carry out any other methods and could accept the power from the white dragon spiritual pearl. However, he also left some caution. Although the speed of his strength growing was fast, there was a limit to it. If he were to jump too fast at once, it would cause his spiritual energy to be unstable, which would result in failure, which wouldn't be a good news to his future days. But, right now, it was all still within Mu Chen's control. His cultivation was already on the right track. Under this type of cultivation, the days started to pass, and in a blink of an eye, 5 days had already passed. The space in the 7th level was considerably huge and vast. The amount of people that could step into this level was little in number. Adding the fact that Mu Chen chose a remote area, there wasn't anyone disrupting his cultivation during these 5 days. And in these 5 days, the spiritual energy ripples that were emitting from Mu Chen's body grew to quite powerful. Splash! Splash! The thunder rain fell, and in that area, there was a bald mountain peak. A slim figure was seated on the lightning luring platform, allowing the lightning rain to fall on his body. His clothing had already been reduced to dust by the lightning rain in these 5 days. A faint silvery luster was being emitted from his skin. It was due to the lightning energy constantly refining his body. In between both his palms, the white dragon spiritual pearl slowly revolved as an extremely pure spiritual energy endlessly poured into his body without ending. However, Mu Chen did not accept the limitless energy. His eyes abruptly opened. The instant his eyes were opened, lightning flashed across his black pupils. The lightning formed into thunder as it shot forth from his eyes. Considerably powerful spiritual energy ripples emitted from Mu Chen's body as they sent stones that were around the lightning luring platform flying. Under the powerful spiritual energy ripples, the never-ending lightning rain was blocked from Mu Chen's body, maintaining a distance of roughly 5 feet, before penetrating through it and fell. Mu Chen exhaled a long lump of white mist that was infused with some lightning. His gaze gradually restored its calmness. Shortly after, his intent moved and he saw the changes in this aura sea. His current spirit had already expanded by a fold as the spiritual energy's luster constantly rippled around it. Within his spirit, there was exceptionally powerful spiritual energy ripples. Compared to the past, the ripples were several times more powerful, far surpassing Heavenly Fusion Stage late phase. However, there was still a distance to Heavenly Transformation Stage. Quasi-Heavenly Transformation Stage. The corner of Mu Chen's lips rose into a satisfied smile. This time round, his strength had undoubtedly flew from Heavenly Fusion Stage middle phase to Quasi-Heavenly Transformation Stage. And in the process, he had skipped Heavenly Fusion Stage late phase. Quasi-Heavenly Transformation Stage. Mu Chen clenched both of his fists as his intent moved. Pitch-black spiritual energy that was blazing with black flames was surging out in waves as it swept out. Looking from afar, it looked like huge black smoke that soared up into the horizon. Even the lightning rain was unable to shake it. His current state was way too powerful, compared to before. Mu Chen lowered his head to the white dragon spiritual pearl in his hand. The latter had already turned a lot more dull as the white mist that was fluctuating within it was also no longer brilliant. However, the spiritual energy within still wasn't fully exhausted yet. Likewise, that spiritual energy would cause a huge impact in his path of cultivation. As Mu Chen wasn't someone that lacked foresight that would be tempted for temporary benefits and forfeits his future paths. He grasped the white dragon spiritual pearl and, with a move of his intent, he had, once again, entered into the misty world, where the white dragon sovereign who was seated on a mist-formed white dragon was. The latter's figure had also dulled down by a lot. How rare! At the sight of Mu Chen, the white dragon sovereign lightly smiled as he said something that most people wouldn't understand. Mu Chen was also blank. Those words that the white dragon sovereign spoke of was definitely not directing to his cultivation leaping from heavenly fusion stage middle phase to quasi-heavenly transformation stage. Even a blockhead with this opportunity could have his strength risen to heavenly transformation stage easily. His current advancement was already considered rather wasteful. Although the spiritual energy that was left behind by me was without any intent, it was still something that I've cultivated, after all. When poured into a person's body, it could be easily absorbed, but compared to the spiritual energy that one personally cultivated, there was still a small difference. The white dragon sovereign lightly smiled, although this small difference was unnoticeable right now, perhaps it would cause obstruction to one's future growth. It is indeed rare for someone to resist the temptation of strength. The smile on the white dragon sovereign's face turned a little more gentle. Mu Chen's actions had, indeed, given him a high impression. Mu Chen was a little embarrassed that he was praised as he ruffled his head. "You're overpraising, senior. In this world, only those that gain strength by themselves are the most dependable. I'm already satisfied with the opportunity. If I were to hope for more, I'm afraid that I would not be able to bear it." All these years, Mu Chen's cultivation was steadily stable and his foundation was exceptionally firm. Although the power left behind by the white dragon sovereign was tempting, it wasn't something that was worth him damaging his foundation. Although a sovereign expert was powerful, Mu Chen believed that there would be a day where he could reach that state as well. Or even surpass it. The white dragon sovereign lightly nodded his head with a smear of appreciation flashing through his eyes. Shortly after, he patted the white dragon that he was mounting. "This intent of mine won't hold out for long. The remaining power in the white dragon spiritual pearl can be given to you for future usage. Furthermore, if you've encountered a strong enemy, you can ignite the white dragon spiritual pearl. I believe that even heavenly completion stage experts would have to run. Many thanks, senior." Mu Chen thanked sincerely. The white dragon sovereign lightly smiled. "I just find you out of the ordinary. My intent was supported by the spiritual energy within the white dragon spiritual pearl and, therefore, I could exist. If you'd absorbed all of the spiritual energy earlier on, you wouldn't be able to hear me speaking now and you wouldn't be fated for the stuff that I've left behind." Mu Chen was startled. The stuff that he left behind? The white dragon sovereign smiled as his hand lightly patted on the white dragon that he was mounting. The white dragon rapidly shrank and turned into a scroll that was made from dragon scales. On the scroll, there was an ancient carved letter. Mu Chen directed his gaze over and the dragon-scaled ancient scroll was imprinted into his eyes. Dragon soaring art. This video will end here.